All right. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome. So this is the cross-chain communication panel where we would like to explore different approaches when it comes to passing tokens, data between different layers of blockchains, like layer 1 to layer 2, but also between different chains like between Ethereum, Solana, Polygon, BSC, etc. As we all know, this year we have opened our eyes to the reality of multi-chain world. And even though many of the panelists have been thinking and working on solving cross-chain communication problems, it is only this year actually, with the increasing amount of users and projects and liquidity on different chains, that this cross-chain communication problem has become essential to solve. Today, I'm really glad to have some of the leading projects and founders who are working to solve this problem in the industry. And we're lucky to have a lot of different perspectives. All these projects are taking somewhat different approaches to solve this problem. And there are so many brilliant teams working on it. So I'm really looking forward to what you guys have to say about cross-chain communication. So before going forward with the questions, I think we can take some time, and I would like to pass it to the panelists. If you guys can take a minute and briefly introduce yourself, that would be great. We can start with Chris, maybe.
Sure. My name is Chris Winfrey. I'm from Hop Protocol. My background's in Solidity development and auditing, and yeah, really excited to be here.
Okay. Hi, this is Movr from Celer. We work on a product called deBridge, which is an interoperability solution, among other things. Glad to be here and chat with everyone.
Alex?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm co-founder of deBridge, which is cross-chain interoperability and liquidity transfer protocol. Our protocol allows to pass arbitrary assets and data between various blockchains. It's great to be here today.
Perfect. Vaibhav?
Hey everyone, I'm Vaibhav. I also go by VC. I'm working at Movr, where we are trying to make cross-chain asset and information movement UX better for everyone. Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. Arjun?
Hi, I'm Arjun. I'm one of the founders of Connext. We're an interoperability protocol between different EVM compatible chains. We let you transfer and call contracts across chains trustlessly.
Thank you. And Philipp?
Hi, I'm Philipp. I'm one of the founders of Li.Finance. We are a bridge and DEX aggregation protocol, and we allow users to move from anywhere into any dApp.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Once again, it's a pleasure to have you all here. And without further ado, I would like to start with the questions. I think the first question I have is, it's been a long time since we've been discussing these cross-chain communication platforms and protocols and different ways to solve it. So what are the most pressing issues and problems in the cross-chain infrastructure space right now? And related to that, why don't we already have easy-to-use solutions with billions of transaction volumes? Let's start with that question. Chris, do you want to take it over first?
Sure. So I mean, specifically for Hop, we're very focused on Ethereum's layer 2, which is still very, very new, especially for fully EVM compatible layer 2, like Optimism and Arbitrum. So we're definitely still seeing liquidity ramp up there. And so in terms of pressing problems, bridge liquidity is definitely top of mind. Layer 2 is growing really, really fast, and so that's oftentimes hard to keep up with. But beyond that, the UX is definitely getting there, and we could really expand beyond asset transfer to things like doing cross-chain contract calls, doing NFT transfers, and things like that.
Cool. I think it is only recently we've started seeing some liquidity on layer 2s. That's probably going to help a lot for Hop Protocol. Alex, do you want to continue with your ideas on that?
Yeah, sure. In my opinion, we are still early because actually the launch of Binance Smart Chain last year was the main trigger when people started to think that we are living not only around Ethereum ecosystem, but there are more blockchain ecosystems that will rapidly evolve. And one of the main problems here is not a liquidity transfer itself, but it's rather transfer of arbitrary messages or arbitrary call data. Because what we want to achieve is we want to make the entire DeFi world cross-chain composable, so that protocols in one blockchain can start to plug into protocols in other ecosystems. And once we achieve truly cross-chain interoperability, the new kind of cross-chain applications will be available. And we can't wait to see like what developers and what projects will build on top of technologies that are interconnecting various blockchain ecosystems.
Cool, thanks a lot. Philipp, would you like to chat?
Yeah, sure. So liquidity was already mentioned. We are lacking some features from some bridges, like being able to do another contact call on the destination chain. But two things I'm seeing as very important right now and as a pressing problem. One is that the trusted third-party system that's required by any bridge is most often not decentralized enough or not even decentralizable by design. That's a very pressing problem, I would say. And also the lack of standardization. So we need to agree on a default asset for any stablecoin representation. And we also need standardization for the APIs that would make things much easier because we have around 50 bridges. So we need to make sure that the ecosystem is not hindered too much in order to grow cross-chain.
Right, I think I have some follow-up questions regarding security trade-offs and the UX. Before that,
you're breaking up. I didn't understand the question.
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Don't know if you could.
No, it's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gokhan, did you drop?
No, I'm here actually.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, regarding the first question, same question actually, if you could share your ideas of what are some of the pressing issues you see in cross-chain communication space right now, that would be great.
Oh yeah, sure. I think all the previous panelists mentioned very important points. But just to add on that, I think another issue that we all are trying to look at is the crypto economics and incentives of this entire cross-chain system. It works very different because aside from the fact that, okay, you're sending some liquidity on a source chain to someone, and someone else, no matter it's a self-custody or shared liquidity pool model, is sending you some liquidity on some other chain or sending the data across, no matter, that's kind of like the fundamental part. But the bigger problem here is that how to determine how should be fees charged based on kind of a supply demands of different liquidities, how to determine, how to resolve some of the very interesting issues in situations like a non-custodial or self-custodial model, where some possibility of a griefing attack can happen. And these kind of a crypto economics problem and game theoretical designs can be very interesting. And in this space, a lot of people are working on this, on different fronts and different models. In general, I think the space is still very dynamic. How do people manage liquidity? How are data being passed or cross-chain smart contract costs being called? These are all very interesting. Yeah, so I think still a very new space and a lot of interesting challenges to be solved.
And just adding up on the fee structure, it's really difficult to predict what fee should be charged from user, because we have all blockchains are separated, right? And not well interconnected. And there is a finality of transaction in every blockchain. And meanwhile, you're transferring liquidity, let's say from Binance Smart Chain to Ethereum, gas price in Ethereum can go twice or 3 times more than it was. And who need to bear this risk of gas price fluctuations? And the point of that, the transaction, in order to have transaction executed, somebody needs to trigger transaction in the target chain and to pay for gas costs. And that's one of the challenges as well. And In our system design, this risk is on user actually, because users suggest the fee for those who will execute transaction for him.
Well, one thing I'll add to the kind of liquidity problem is all of us, I think, bridge, maybe less than 10 assets. And there's obviously tons and tons of assets across all these chains. And supporting those long tail assets can be really difficult because ultimately there needs to be some kind of liquidity provider that has exposure and is taking on risk of that exposure to those assets. And it's just really hard to kind of scale up across that really long tail.
Yeah, I think there we'll see something like it will start with the main assets, but then hopefully in the future, kind of trickle down to the long tail assets. But let's see about that. One thing, when we were checking the first cross-chain projects in the space, we realized, all right, a lot of these design of these cross-chain communication projects tackling cross L1 versus cross L2, right? They're kind of similar, but then there are also a lot of differences when it comes to the choices, or how do you guys consider the security, latency, and fee problems? And do you think these are very different if you're tackling with cross layer 1 versus cross layer 2? That's a very interesting question to me. Arjun, would you like to start with that?
Sure, yeah. It is an interesting question. I think the answer to it depends on the type of bridge that you have. So, if you're building something like Celer or Connext, where you are basically a repayment protocol, you're basically enabling some sort of locked transfer across chains, then it ultimately doesn't really matter what environment is running underneath. So whether you're on an L1 or an L2 or even a fiat bank account, as long as it can actually complete the settlement instructions, it's fine. But then on the other hand, if you're running an externally verified system like a multisig or something like that, or even something like XCMP, the constraints around security change a lot based on what the underlying security model of the L1 is. In general, I would say in the former case, your security model is pretty much the same. But of course, going across L1s means now you have security exposure to the both the source and the destination L1. And in most cases, L1s are not going to be as secure as Ethereum itself. So if you want to go with a security maximalist perspective, then cross L2 is always going to be a better option because you're actually defaulting to the security of Ethereum, which is the most secure chain in the world at this point. Whereas on the other hand, if you are doing this kind of more externally verified mechanism, then you do have a lot of potential security trade-offs that exist because you now have the risk of the bridge, you now have the risk of the L1, you are incurring the potential risk of one of the L1s being attacked as well. That compounds to create something that could potentially have user funds be lost.
Got it. I was just going through your article actually, the cross-chain bridging trilemma. So in that case, I think it depends what kind of security assumptions you have. And if depending on those, it doesn't matter actually if it's L1 or L2 actually, right? If it's externally validated, then you might have the same problems with cross L2 as well, if that's the right understanding. Thanks a lot. Vaibhav, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for sure. I really like how Mustafa from Celestia kind of framed this model of clusters. So there's an Ethereum cluster, there's a Cosmos cluster, there's a Polkadot cluster. Inter-cluster communication can be more trustless, but intra-cluster or communication between clusters has to be by default more trustful because there's no common trust layer for both of them. But yes, systems like what Connext and Celer have, they don't really care about what chains they are on. All they need is EVM. So I think they are more universal in that sense. But yeah, they're just because like L2s have this like common parent layer, it does like make things easier a bit security wise. I think I would like love to hear what Chris has to say on this, because like Hop is, you know, the perfect example of cross L2.
I think we might be the only like just L2 bridge right now, and so you know that is a big limitation of Hop is that you know we can only work across Ethereum layer 2s, but I think in exchange for that we're able to kind of have you know best in class latency and you know in terms of the trust model it's as good as it gets as well. So like best in class latency is one round of finality. You'll always have to wait for one round of finality on the source chain. Whereas, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe both Celer and Connext with kind of the hash time lock setup, you have to wait for 2 rounds of finality, one on the source chain and one on the destination chain. But then the hash time lock setup is also completely trustless, and you know, but Hop is also able to maintain complete trustlessness, but in exchange, you know, we can't, you know, bridge to a lot of the chains that you guys support, and you know, we're kind of constrained just within the Ethereum cluster, as you put it, VC.
I think you guys would have, you guys have to wait for finality on L1 as well for when you make the L1 transaction. So it actually, I think, comes out to be the same amount of time.
So the destination transaction can be made after one round of finality.
Yeah, well, but like I'm assuming, I guess in this case, I'm talking about like if you're doing optimism to Arbitrum, you have to have like an L1 transaction happen that is finalized that the Arbitrum bridge could then see on L1 and then port to L2, right?
No, the user makes a transaction on optimism, and then the bonder will make you know, after one round of finality, the bonder will make a transaction on Arbitrum. Whereas you know a hash time lock would have to do like the setup, and then unlock. But then you have to wait for full finality for the first setup, and then full finality after the second setup. And then funds can be unlocked. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. And you know, I think like the bonder in this in the Hop model really helps in this particular case of like this one round communication essentially, because you know, as long as you see the you know, basically X token on the source chain, then you know there is some confidence that eventually it will come back basically. So yeah, just as a small clarification on our end, that is we support the hash time lock model, of course, but we also support in the 2.0 version where we use a shared liquidity pool model as well. So right now, like Celer becomes like a bi model, you know, a hybrid model, basically can cater to both the self-custodial liquidity model and also the shared liquidity pool model, basically.
Just a quick question. I wonder, by one round of finality in Arbitrum, so are you waiting for a sequencer to process the transaction, or how it looks for Arbitrum or for transfers from Arbitrum to Optimism?
Yeah, currently, currently we're just waiting for the sequencer. The rollups today are actually quite centralized. But you know, in like once they do become decentralized, the way you would wait for layer 2 finality is you wait for that transaction to be included in a batch as call data on L1, and then just wait for L1 finality beyond that. So it should be like roughly the same time as Ethereum's finality for optimistic rollups.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Let me move to the next one, where I'd like to get your opinions on. So, like, we have a lot of DeFi projects; those are launching on different chains, right? And then recently, we've seen a lot of different like structured products where they start with cross-chain DeFi, kind of motto, where they want to provide these services across the chains. So I'm just curious, how do you think the cross-chain implementation will occur in DeFi? Do you think existing DeFi protocols moving cross-chain or inherently cross-chain centric DeFi projects using cross-chain infrastructure will become more popular? For that, shall we start with Philipp?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's both. It's very use case dependent. Obviously, a DEX aggregator would deploy himself on another chain just in order to aggregate DEXs on that particular chain again, right? Whereby a Yearn could drive cross-chain strategies, but also we are missing one other case here, and it's the matter of fact that your users are already multi-chain, right? They've been aping on BSC and Polygon beginning this year, and now they've been aping on Phantom, and now it's Arbitrum. So your users are already multi-chain. You just need to allow them to come from all these different chains to the chain your dApp is on. So we could think of something like PayPal or Stripe, whereby payment processing is abstracted away and people could come from anywhere. That's another way to go cross-chain, simply allow people to come from anywhere without having them to send to bridges. That's actually what we are working on.
Perfect. And I think we're seeing something similar, like a trend in the cross L2 as well. Chris, do you want to talk more about what are your ideas on that? Maybe within the Ethereum or cross L2 space?
Sure. I honestly, I don't have a great answer. I think it's really early, and it's almost too early to say kind of like if it's going to be the current apps or the new ones. Like we've seen kind of Maker move over. We've seen Aave, Synthetics, and so like a lot of the big protocols are moving over. They've announced some kind of like layer 2 strategy, like Maker's Wormhole, Aave's Portal. But then at the same time, we've seen protocols like MIM who have taken kind of the cross chain from the get-go. Approach, and they've been able to kind of explode, by taking that approach. So it should be interesting to see if it's like the makers that have kind of established themselves on layer 1 and then move to layer 2, or if it's like the MIMs that kind of take the approach from the get-go and can kind of like move fast and move into that cross-chain world faster.
Sure. I think one of the problems that like the existing DeFi protocols might face when they move to different chains is, of course, the token incentivization rate. How do they actually have or carry enough tokens to incentivize participation on these different chains? Whereas those DeFi applications start cross-chain from the get-go, I think they plan for that in advance. But then, of course, there are ways around this through the governance rules and etc. But anyways, Vaibhav, do you want to also chime in regarding this question?
Yeah, for sure. Like these big hacks kind of scared everyone for sure. But like some amazing work has been done by the MakerDAO team, by Aave's team, and there are some new and these small nimble teams that want to work on these cross-chain applications for their community. I think the number of DeFi use cases will just accelerate from here, because the DeFi market is hungry for yield, and cross-chain is another yield-making opportunity. And because it makes sense for a protocol to earn yield via doing some cross-chain activity, I think we see a lot of innovation happen there, and I'm very excited for that.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I think the next question, I'm going to jump one question, but so I think we had this problem when we were first evaluating the layer 2s in the space, right? It was a question whether there will be one layer 2, because then the liquidity wouldn't be fragmented, and which would be better for all the users, right? And it turns out right now, at least it seems that there will be, and there are many of them that are competing against each other, and each of them might be serving different markets, different kinds of applications, etc. So having you all here asking this question, what do you think is going to play out on the cross-chain communication space, right? Do you see this in a way that at the end, increasing network effects will play an important role, and there will be one or two that are handling most of the cross-chain, let's say, transactions? Or do you see, similar to at least what we have with layer 2s right now, a lot of players serving different needs, serving different users, different security fees, etc. So let's go with that. Alex, do you want to start first?
Yeah, sure. We can see that many like layer 2 solutions are popping up, right? And it's not only Ethereum based layer 2s. We also are getting like Neon, which is EVM compatible layer 2 based on Solana. We are getting Aurora, which is layer 2 based on Near protocol, and probably even more protocols will be implemented. And I think our main goal here is to provide infrastructure and to provide a framework so that protocols and users can decide in what specific ecosystem they want to live in and what like security trade-offs they are ready to accept. And in regards to scalability, I think we will have protocol probably in Ethereum as in the most secure chain. And we also will need to have at least one instance of protocol and some cheap layer 2 with low transaction fees. And for every protocol, actually, there are two ways to scale up. So the first one is when users from any other blockchain ecosystems can interact with the protocol in Ethereum. And in this case, of course, they will have to bear gas costs for transaction settlement in Ethereum. And the second way of scalability is to create instances of the protocol in other blockchains so that users can communicate directly with those instances that live in layer 2. And yeah, as I said, our main goal here is to provide a freedom, right? To provide a framework, infrastructure, so that everyone can choose the place to live in.
Thanks a lot. Arjun, do you want to go next with that?
Yeah. So this question is interesting because like most of the people on this call are competing. And so, you know, we're all like acutely thinking about this problem and thinking about like how will this market look in the future. Yeah. I think you're totally right that it's similar to like layer 2s where the reality is that people really just hate adopting standards, and like even in like very anti-competitive markets where you have like, you know, exploitative monopolies like, you know, card payments, you have two major card payment giants, and then you have a long tail of like other card networks that are also all billion-dollar companies, right? Like there's it's such a huge market, and like the same thing exists here. Is this is a multi-trillion-dollar market, and it's like getting larger at a frightening pace. And the reality is that like it's both like impossible and also very, very fragile for only one project to actually dominate the entire market. I think the way that this will end up is that there will be like, you know, similar to the DEX market, 3 to 5 big protocols that are actually, you know, like have big brands, are largely used. Those protocols may build up some amount of defensibility around their brand, but the reality is that in an open source world where now liquidity is very easy to bootstrap and liquidity as a service exists, even any sort of like infrastructure or like a network effect is just really not ever going to exist. And instead, what's going to happen is that you'll have like some of these bigger brands exist into the future. And my hope and my goal is that you know, the projects that end up succeeding are the ones that actually do, like if we have this like big open competitive landscape of, you know, 50 plus bridges now, my hope is that the ones that end up succeeding are the ones that actually do care about trustlessness. It used to stress me out a lot because I was like, oh my God, we're competing with 50 people. Like, how are we ever gonna differentiate ourselves? But I'm realizing that like ultimately, you know, obviously I want Connext to succeed, but ultimately like what matters for the space is that we end up with solutions that actually matter and that will actually exist long term. And so my hope is that, you know, some of the people on this call, some of the, you know, other folks that are like really focusing on, let's make this, make these like long-term solutions, these can be the people that we compete with, and it can actually be like a healthy, you know, competition where like we're pushing each other to be better, and like we're still acknowledging the other projects as being like actually caring about the space and actually, you know, pushing the envelope.
Cool. I think, yeah, in the end, the undisputed winner is the ecosystem as a general best. Chris, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mean, I don't have much to add. That was a really good answer, Arjun. I totally agree. And yeah, like I think we'll kind of see like more or less like a power law distribution, kind of like we see in the exchange market or the lending market or, anything else on Ethereum. But yeah, I do hope that the decentralized solutions went out and that's ultimately what's going to be best for the whole space.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, can I hop in real quick?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So like there are like definitely I don't know if there are, but at least in my head there are like two different kinds of bridges. One are operated by like one are liquidity assisted and one are actual state transfers. For example, like let's say if someone works with optics, they can directly do cross-chain state transfers. If they work with something like Chainlink oracles, they can transfer state directly cross-chain. They don't need external liquidity. So I feel like in these like state transfer models, there might actually be a network effect associated with like what's your kind of framework for sending messages across. Which like this kind of network effect might not exist for liquidity assisted bridges because like liquidity is no longer a mode. I'm curious to hear like what other people feel about this, because like there's definitely some kind of like difference between these two types of bridges.
Anybody wants to jump?
I think Arjun had something very well said, but like I also agreeing with the previous point as well, is that if we look at the liquidity space, if we look at the bridge in terms of the liquidity bridges or token bridges, it really liquidity has no loyalty here, right? So like for the users, there's no user retention per se because like they like your UI or anything. It's just really because the transaction fee for either small liquidity or large liquidity are relatively lower than others. And there are a lot of arbitrageurs that are already arbitraging across all the bridges sitting in this panel today. So like basically our price is more or less evened out basically from each other. So now on that front, there are a lot of interesting questions to be solved. Like things like how to have efficient pricing, how to have the most highly efficiently utilized liquidity. So there are some challenges there to be solved, but again, like that part of the things is kind of hard to stick because like we can do something like that, and another different bridge solution can do very similar things by just like looking at it's all open source after all, right? So like by looking at this entire solution space and quickly kind of learn from each other, basically. But at the same time, there are definitely some moat in terms of like application-based bridgings. So let's say we integrated with some major DEXs that are now using one of our solutions to do not only just like a liquidity bridge to guide the user to say, hey, you can move your liquidity to another chain and use the same application there, but instead it becomes a unified liquidity pool across multiple chains that let the user to basically say, okay, you want to swap your token on this chain to some token on the other chain and send that back. Yeah, you can do that all in this same user interface. Now, if that integration start to happen, that kind of things have some buyer lock-in, right? Basically, like if you're already integrated with that particular solution, it started to become a little bit harder to move away, as a lot of the ongoing transactions are going to happen and pertains to that particular application, not just a simple liquidity movement. So I feel there are definitely some moat around that area, and I know everyone on this panel is like working day and night to kind of achieve that. But in the end, I think like the multi-chain war is definitely happening, and I'm excited to see how this unfolds, and definitely we can all work together and compete together in a very healthy way to kind of nudge each other to bring better future for the entire cross-chain world.
I just want to say, Mo, I like that Celer has been like messaging about this because we've been talking about it too, and I'm really convinced that like the bridge UI that exists right now that everybody goes to, and everyone's like, oh, well, I have to use XYZ application on this other chain, and I need to like go to this bridge UI and like bridge and then go use it. Like, I really think that that's just a very, very shitty experience across the board. And I know that everybody's doing it right now because they have to, but what I'm hoping and expecting happens is that like the concept of bridging or like going to a bridge UI is going to be like the email of like the interoperability space, where it's going to be like a very important first use case, and it's something that people will still like think about. But you know, people really don't like using email anymore. You could just build chat into every application, and it's so much better. So yeah, I hope that goes away soon.
Yep.
Yeah, I also would like to add to this. Like if I'm about to onboard my friends a couple of years from now, I don't want to explain them that they have to use bridges and DEXs in order to get from A to B. So I think DEXs are going to be abstracted away by wallets. They can simply swap and exchange there. And yeah, I mean, also sending people to a bridge in order to move a blockchain, in my opinion, in the future, developers will pick a blockchain like they pick a database based on technical properties, maybe based on incentives in that case as well. And ultimately, the user won't know on which chain he or she is on, right? I see that abstracted away a lot, on multiple levels abstracted away, on a technical level, but also on liquidity level. Let's say we're going to see countries issuing stable coins. Maybe even ownership is abstracted away in a sense that you have to really go deep in order to find, let's say we are building a social network and we are using like the social network is using 20 protocols, like a software as a service is using 20 APIs today, right? So maybe even liquidity is abstracted away in a sense that you really have to dive deep into discovering, okay, which protocols am I owning by using this social network? Because I've been using so many different underlying protocols at the same time. Like, is ownership bubbled up and then abstracted away, or how will it look like? I think there are so many more abstractional concepts coming up in the future. And I see that as the only way, because consumers today are so lazy, their attention span is so short, user adoption is hard. Like, we're used to social media and so on, and this is a fact that won't change. So everything is getting more convenient, and now we are coming with a blockchain, which is completely new technological infrastructure, and we are now expecting consumers to adjust to that. No, I don't think that's going to happen. We have to adjust to them, and we can only hope that that our value system, all the ideals we're having with the Web 3.0, that ownership, like you can read, write, and own the internet, right? That we don't forget about that in the long run, and that we are able to keep that present and manifest that in the mindset of the people.
Perfect. I mean, I think that's a great segue, and I'm getting warned that we're kind of passing the 40 minutes line. But I would like to take an opportunity to give everyone maybe just like, do you see some catalysts that are gonna kind of make the usage of cross-chain communication channels a must, right? Or related to that, maybe like, how do you see 5 years down the line, the applications that are enabled by cross-chain communication infrastructure that you guys are laying out right now? So maybe like some predictions into the future, we can end up with that, and that will be great. Maybe like Arjun, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Catalyst is a difficult question because like it's always really unclear what a catalyst is until like after you look back at it. The core catalyst is like the liquidity fragmentation that's already happening. That's really what's pushing, that's really what's pushed like 50 bridge projects to be created under. It's insane. And also everyone to start moving to using these different applications, moving to different layer 2s. So I would say like I think at this point it's more of like a time issue than like a one thing that's going to kick it off issue, where like we're building liquidity, Celer is building liquidity, Hop is building liquidity, like but I know that every bridge is like trying to like scale up right now, and everyone is growing incredibly fast. So it's just a matter of time before we hit that point. What does that look like in 5 years? So I think Philipp, what you were saying is really something that I resonate with, and something that we talk a lot about in our community, which is that like, and as part of our narrative, which is like we really don't think users should have to care what chain they're on or what L2 they're on. I think that's like a notion that like exists currently because there's relatively few L2s and chains, and because like people are relatively technical when they're using this stuff. But like even now, when you talk to new users in the space, like having to explain to them, oh, you're on BSC, okay, you need to pay BNB for this transaction, but then once you use Polygon, you're going to have to go and get this other asset named Matic, and like, yeah, these are actually two separate systems, and like you can't, your BNB and your Matic address are totally different. Like that's just nonsense to a person who doesn't even understand how a blockchain works. And so I think that's like, I would say overall, like we're going to head towards this like world where by default applications are just going to be cross-chain, like in the same way that internet applications today are like replicated across CDNs across the world. And that will mean, you know, one, the user experience is a lot better, but then on top of that also like opens up this new market around other tangential cross-chain services and protocols that can exist. So yeah, it's my 2 cents.
Sure, yeah, thanks a lot. Vaibhav, do you want to share your ideas on that?
Yeah, like it's definitely super unclear, but like as I mentioned before, just because there is a yield earning opportunity here, you know, by like facilitating cross-chain transfers, I think that yield is like, you know, going to drive a lot of innovation, hopefully. And like one of these things is like really going to take off and is going to inspire others to like, you know, try and adopt those models for their community. At least that's my hope.
Cool. Alex?
Yeah, I fully agree actually with what Arjun and Philipp said, that like all cross-chain communication will be abstracted by wallets. And what we all are doing, we're doing like TCP/IP for the internet of blockchain. I like this example because when we use internet, we don't care about like how technology underneath it all is working, right? Same with the cross-chain and wallets. It's just a matter of time. And I think like not in 5, but even like in a few years, we'll see many protocols that are communicating cross-chain with each other, which plug into each other, and new type of financial applications will be enabled. And users will just go to their MetaMask or to any other wallet, and all wallets will support many different types of blockchains, not like EVM wallet, but it will be like either you can use EVM chains or Cosmos or Solana, whatever, and that will be the only abstraction. And user just like click confirm transaction, the wallet, user just pick the protocol he wants to interact with, and all the intercommunication will happen in the background, right? In the backend. And yeah, that's what we all are trying to achieve. We try to deliver a really great user experience, and it will happen very soon, I believe. It's like the matter of nearest, like next year, early next year, we'll see many more cross-chain applications. And it will be like tsunami, you know, the wave of cross-chain. Everyone will realize that they want to tap into user bases of other blockchain ecosystems. They want to integrate and become composable with other protocols cross-chain, and everyone will start like digging into this area. And yeah, I'm personally really excited about cross-chain, and really excited about what we all guys are building. I think we are at the very early stage here, and yeah, we'll see what projects and applications will be there next year.
Perfect. Yeah, fingers crossed, and thanks a lot. I think I wish we had another hour. I have a lot of follow-up questions, but unfortunately we will have to cut it now. Apparently we're close to 50 minutes now. But anyways, I really want to thank again to all of our panelists for taking their time to participate in this panel and share their insights about the future of cross-chain communication. I hope our audience will enjoy the content we put out. And we're looking forward to get together again, maybe next year, in 2 years, and reflect on some of the predictions or the things that we've discussed here. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot, all the panelists, for joining today and listening for the audience. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Gokhan.
Bye-bye.